This brings us, Dr. Lechner, to, I think, the Highcrest sixth grade one-to-one learning update.
Yes, as promised last month, the board is receiving another big update on our sixth grade one-to-one learning initiative. As you can see from the report that's online, the pilot has been going very well, and it has been informing us as we do our planning moving forward. Now, you're going to note that we're recommending fees associated with this program should it go forward. So tonight's an important update, as next month we'll be seeking your official approval. And Adam Denenberg has this report.
Waiting for my presentation to load, pardon me. All right, I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about our sixth grade one-to-one learning program. In addition to preparing our students for 21st century learning, to be lifelong learners, and to develop skills and knowledge for high school, college, and beyond, 5 program goals have been identified by our CRC committee last year. This month, we have an update on each of these goals, parent and student focus group feedback, a budget analysis for expanding the one-to-one program, and a discussion on technology fees. In January, we ran 4 student focus groups. 2 boys and 2 girls from each of the pilot homerooms were randomly selected. Their reflection and feedback was very helpful. While we recorded every focus group discussion and summarized the common threads in tonight's written report, I thought it would be beneficial to hear more from the students. So tonight we have some special guests who are going to provide us an inside look into the one-to-one learning program from a student's perspective. I want to call up 2 of our 6th grade one-to-one learning students, Michael Howie and Katie Pickens. Michael and Katie, thank you for coming here tonight. They're going to transition over to taking their iPads, and they're going to show them up on the screen in just a minute here. You want to start, Katie? Do you want to stand here? Put your iPad up here.
Hi, my name is Katie Pickens. I am a 6th grader at Highcrest Middle School, and I am in Mrs. Bassett's homeroom. And I'm in the iPad pilot, which means that I get to use the iPad for homework and assignments every day. And I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of using the iPad in our curriculum and how it has helped me become a better student. The 3 apps that I'm going to focus on are Schoology, Email, and UPad. So Schoology is kind of like an interactive binder and assignment notebook. So it allows the students to message, exchange grades, projects, homework with teachers, and the teachers can show you updates, and you have access to see all of your courses. So I can see, like, let's say I wanted to see my social studies projects. I can go to social studies, select a folder, and pick a project. And then if I want to write on the project, I can go to UPad. And UPad is basically a notebook for iPad, so it gives me the ability to write on it, I can type on it, and I can also add pictures to it. So the advantages of UPad are that it makes my note-taking much easier because I can just take pictures of notes, I can type up a project, I can type my homework, do math, endless possibilities. And also, I'm not the most organized person, so the folders that I can make folders within folders. It helps me. It was better than the binder system that we used last year, because with binders, you can lose papers much more easily than documents. And the last app that I'm going to show you is email. So communication with teachers and students has improved a lot for me over this school year, because last year when I tried to email, you wouldn't email unless you were told to by a teacher. But now if I have a question I can email a teacher, and I will almost immediately get a response. And this really helps my learning experience because, well, constant communication really helps answer questions. So that's it. I think that we should use iPads next year because it has really improved my learning experience. So any comments, questions, or concerns?
I do have one question for Katie. Katie, hi, I'm board member Keith Drone. A great presentation. When you do your typing function with UPad, are you using a keyboard or are you just using the
Well, we have the option to use a keyboard. I prefer just typing on the glass because I find that keyboards often get typed on by accident. But a few of my classmates do use keyboards, and that works for them. So
Okay, if you have a more detailed project, it's probably easier using the keyboard.
probably for most people, but I just type
Okay.
on an iPad.
Thank you.
And here is Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Howie. I am a sixth grader at Highcrest Middle School. I'm in Miss Omselig's homeroom, and I'm also going to talk to you about how the iPad helps my everyday learning. So some examples that I've used so far at Highcrest is an app called Pick Collage. So Pick Collage is basically an app where you can create a collage using backgrounds, images, and text. So some examples, for social studies, we were learning about the Neolithic time period, so we created a flyer, like an advertisement to live there. In writing, we made persuasive essays, and we made a pic collage about why you should donate to a specific organization, and I chose the Northfield Food Pantry. So I made a flyer about that. And expository essays, I wrote about all the cool things in Brazil. So another cool app is called iMovie. It's where you can create a movie or a trailer to any thing you want. And so I have two examples. I'll only show one, but this is a reading project. We got to make a trailer on a book we read. So. So that's one example I have. There's another one, but we don't have time to show it. So there's another cool thing called app smashing, which is where you can take a project and you can combine it with another app and completely change it up. So one example, just recently we created a social studies project about ancient Egyptians, and we created a travel book in a group, and what we did is we put it into Book Creator, which is an app, and you can pretty much make a book out of anything, text, images, audio, and video. So we made a video here. I can show it. So this is our book. So so you can see this is how we created it. I can play the audio.
Hello and welcome to ancient Egypt.
And so then we have you can see there's images, there's audio, and there's videos. So here I can play a video.
Egyptian games are awesome. Oh my.
So they can be like fun stuff, and there's.
I love the Egyptian games, especially the wrestling, because I love watching my brothers fight.
So that's another cool thing you can do. And so we all created this. We had like a group of about 8 people, and we created a book like this. And so and then we combined it by everyone in our group airdropped it, which is a way of kind of emailing, but it's a shorter and easier way. So we combined the books, and at the end we had an easy bib to cite the sources right here. So these apps have already been talked about, but Schoology is probably one of the most common apps we use. It's where you can download PDFs of assignments or work and put them into UPad. And you can also check grades. You can get updates posted by your teachers, and you can see your homework. And there's a calendar that shows what homework you have and when it's due. And UPad is an app where you can download a PDF from Schoology, and you can draw, write, and insert images. And a good thing about UPad is that it saves all your work, so you don't have to manually save it. It automatically saves, so that's a nice thing. So the iPad plays a really big role in my learning every day. As you can see, I use it in many ways, and I hope we have it next school year. And thank you for supporting us.
Thank you. Are there other questions from board members? I see Mr. Steen has one.
I've got a question. Do you have any friends in other classes that don't have the iPad, and do you ever have conversations with them?
Yeah, well, a lot of times I tell them, sometimes I brag to them, about how the iPads are so much better and they're so much lighter than the binders. And most of them wish they had an iPad. So I think lots of people that I know that don't have the iPads are hoping that they can have them next year.
Do you think you do more sort of creation work where you've shown us all these cool projects that you made? Do you do more of that than your friends that don't have the iPads?
Yeah, I think with the iPads, it's much easier to get creative. Because if you're on paper and pencil, usually you would only have one color. But in UPad, you can change the colors, and so it's nice because you can get much more creative.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job. Thanks very much, and I really hope you get your parents back at the end of the movie.
I had a question. On the Ancient Egypt book that you did, so did each of the students use their own iPad to create their page?
Yes.
They were collaborating with a group of iPads with the students, right?
Yes.
And then you airdropped it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions, Ms. Alcantara?
I am wondering, thank you very much for your presentation. It was one of the better presentations, both of you, that we've had. It was fantastic. So I am wondering if you, in addition to these creation projects, if you also used your iPad for any lessons that were taught to you in a flipped way, so that you learned a lesson at home, delivered by the teacher by video, maybe did some kind of quiz or not, and then did something different when you got to used that video when you got to school the next day, basically.
Yeah, well, we have had homework before where we have to take like a mini quiz, and we can just take it at home and submit it from home. So that's easier because you don't have to worry about forgetting it at home. It's automatically submitted, and all you have to do is be in an area that has Wi-Fi, and then you're fine.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Other questions? I have one. And Katie, if you have an answer, I'd like to hear from you as well. What do you two think, and what are you hearing from classmates and friends about using the iPad in math class?
Well, math is a lot harder because it's harder to show your work because, I mean, I show my work on like pencil and paper, but with UPad, you have to do a lot of like scrolling, and sometimes like it doesn't work sometimes. So that's like the bad thing about UPad. But other than that, I think it's good. Yeah.
Well, I personally use I made a notebook in UPad that I use, I write notes on, I take pictures of things that my teacher writes on the board, and then sometimes after school when some of my classmates and I are confused, we might message each other saying, hey, could you explain problem number 2 to me, please? And then we collaborate and we talk about ways that we could understand and due dates, and for me, it makes the process easier.
And do you do more of that than you used to? Checking with friends on problems and questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Outstanding presentations by you both. Ms. Levine.
Sorry, I have one follow-up question. So you're talking about all these apps and how you use them. How easy was it for you to kind of come up to speed to learn all the tricks of the iPad? Did it take you a couple of months, couple of weeks? Are you still kind of learning new ways to use it, or how would you talk about that?
Yeah, well, when I started the iPads, I had pretty much never used any of the apps that I use now. I used Mail, but that was pretty much it. So it kind of took a while to get used to it all, but once I learned tricks you can use, it became a lot easier.
Because you both sound like experts, really. So.
The transition took maybe a couple of weeks, but it was pretty smooth otherwise. I think the teachers also helped us understand apps and stuff like that. So.
I think that covers it. You've done well. Many thanks.
Thank you.
As we're transitioning to the continuation of this presentation, I just want to emphasize again that the students were talking about collaborating within the school and outside of the school. I know that a lot of parents were worried about that not being the case.
All right, I'll continue on. Our teachers have been integrating technology to modify and redefine assignments for many years. Many of our students have access to a shared device or even their own computer or tablet at home. Some project examples from tonight's report could be done with a student laptop, a digital video camera, or maybe even done at home. So why do we need a one-to-one program? What is different? Over the next few slides, I'm going to answer that question and refer to some of our program goals. After I review these, I will be asking some more guests to assist us tonight to highlight our program goals. A big benefit to a one-to-one learning program, goal number 2, is that all students have anytime, anywhere access at school, outside of school, and at home to the same device, and that is important. This continuity and access for everyone is a time saver, and it is powerful. It allows teachers to transform not just one assignment, but the entire educational experience. Access in school, in a typical classroom, teachers need to reserve a laptop cart, which are in high demand, with limited windows of availability. Or they bring the class to the computer lab. Time is spent reserving a lab, walking the class down to the lab, or time is spent rolling down the laptop cart, or hunting down the laptop cart when the previous teacher did not return it to the library. When classes are working with laptop carts, there's the constant battle to charge the laptops, finding a charged laptop, which was low on battery power, or locating a power adapter. In desktop computer labs and laptops, students have to sign into the network because they are sharing the device with other students. This is all very time consuming. In a one-to-one program, students press the home button on their iPad and they are instantly ready to go. They have their entire classroom and learning experience available in their hands. Access at home. For students that have access to technology at home, is it their own or are they sharing it? What if they can't use it tonight? Does every student have the same programs and apps they are using at school? If a student starts an iMovie project at school and want to work on it at home, do they have iMovie at home? Which version? How are they going to transfer the files? Put them in Google Drive? What if they forget? Put them on a flash drive? What if they lose it? Or the drive becomes corrupted? Email it? What if it's too big? These are all unreliable and time-consuming components of trying to continue class work on a home computer. What if several or even one student does not have access to this technology at home? Can teachers expect or require the same learning activities at home for all students in their class? When teachers know exactly what device their students will have access to, they can plan accordingly and transform learning, not just facilitate creative or collaborative projects, but build an online learning community. A one-to-one learning program increases student engagement and ownership in learning. Goal number 3. Every parent and student in our focus group, as well as all of our pilot teachers, have stated that the current one-to-one learning program has improved students' organization and self-advocacy skills. With Schoology, Google Drive, UPad to organize work, they always have what they need for school and know when things are due, even when they are homesick. They are more accountable for their learning. While they may have emailed their teachers in the past, the culture and environment that has been created for these students has made this an automatic process, as we heard in our student example. The students are now the problem solvers and go-getters. The students have what they need from the same device at school and at home. Transforming learning is goal number 1, and we saw how multimedia is a huge component in this program. And while students may have tools at home that can incorporate video, images, and sound into their projects, and they may be able to use the student laptops at school, they are guaranteed everyday access to these tools in a one-to-one program. Many apps and features built in the iPad can be used to differentiate instruction for all learners, as we will hear about shortly. Every student also has access to a camera, a video recorder, and apps for production and creativity. When students are creating content through a blog, a current events presentation, an interactive Spanish Google tour of Wilmette, a travel book on ancient Egypt, or creating a fitness video, they are being critical thinkers, validating research, and required to understand content at a higher level during the creation process. Goal 5 is to promote the connected strategic plan. In a one-to-one program, we know every student has access to the internet in school and at home. This topic came up at a recent meeting with the one-to-one pilot team. If a student has a question or needs to see a video explanation or find a picture, it is available immediately. Have a need or interest to research a topic? You don't have to go to the lab or wait to use a computer. This information is available at your fingertips. Schoology and Google Drive have increased collaboration and communication opportunities for students. The responsibility of having a device, online access to schoolwork, and accountability for participating in an online learning system has resulted in students having to problem solve, be persistent in finding the answer and some troubleshooting, and has provided lessons on social responsibility in an online learning community. Many activities on the iPad support the National Education Technology Standards, which is part of goal number 4, including Schoology, as we keep talking about, which is our learning management system. It is an online and collaborative assignment notebook, calendar, discussion board, assessment tool, organizational tool, and feedback mechanism. In a one-to-one learning program, teachers can rely on students having access to Schoology at home and at school from the same device that they created the content on. Teachers also know the students will be able to continue to work this work from home and submit it online when it's complete. Schoology, along with Google Drive, apps like iMovie, Explain Everything, provide ideal environment for creative projects, communication, collaboration, through blogs and joint research projects and presentations. Again, lessons on digital citizenship are a requirement for participating in this community, and critical thinking skills are also used throughout iPad learning projects to verify, analyze, and interpret their research as they create their own content. Very similar to the last goal. Now to illustrate some examples of how we are meeting these goals and to respect the time of our remaining special guests, I'm going to call up some of our one-to-one teachers. They include Maura Whiston, who is a learning behavior specialist on our one-to-one team, Amanda Knicker, who is incorporating one-to-one learning into physical education and health, and Rebecca Cross, who is taking full advantage of the one-to-one learning program in her 6th grade Spanish class.
We're quick. I'm Amanda Knicker, and I teach 6th grade health and PE. And we sort of met together and came up with just how ways that, in general, the iPads and the one-to-one help with just the flow in our classrooms. So two of the things is the organization of and access to materials, which Michael and Katie did a fabulous job of telling you about. The kids see it, we see it. You know, if plans have to change on the fly because schedules change or fire drills or something comes up, being able to switch to plan B becomes just mindless. You're there and the kids are ready, rather than the transition time of, I got to run to my locker, this is at home, whatever it is. So that transition time is great. Just like efficiency of classroom procedures, the handing back of papers and the giving grades back now becomes just second nature and things that kids can do at home. And it gives more time back to the instruction and back to the important piece of what we're doing.
I'm going to talk a little bit when we get to the other slides just about two things that are pretty important from my perspective as a special educator, and that's the independence and the self-advocacy benefits that I've seen this year with my students. Another big thing also has been just the advantage of being able to implement some portions of the IEP more discreetly, which for students at this age is important. They don't want to look different, so I'll be talking a little bit about that.
And then across the staff, we've seen an overall improvement, and again, the kids touched on this too, of their organization of materials, and then even within units. So within UPAD, they can create folders for each class, and then within those folders, create folders for each unit, and have their supplies and paperwork there. So it's really easy, especially like in a world language class, for them to go back, oh, I remember that we learned that vocabulary this unit, I don't remember what it is, and it's really easy for them to find it. Kind of going along with that is their access to information on the web and ability in the real world to find these things. I'm going to show you an example later. But also on a daily basis, they have a quick question. Oh yeah, go ahead, search it on Google real quick and see what's going on.
All right, so I'm going to start us off. Independence is definitely something that we strive to teach our kids, especially in 6th grade with them going to the junior high. And I found this year that really the iPads have cause the kids to gain their independence, which is really great. One way is pretty basic. It comes with the iPad. It's the timers. I can set a reminder for a student if he needs to bring a certain book every Thursday at a certain time. He doesn't need a staff member to remind him to do that. He doesn't need a sticker in his locker to remind him to do that. He can get a little ping on his iPad reminding him. This year, unfortunately, I have a student who's diabetic, and so at a certain time every day, he needs to make sure that his blood glucose is at an acceptable level, and so rather than having an adult remind him to do that, I can set a timer for him to do that. Email access, I know the kids really did talk a lot about this, but for me, I know I've seen a lot more emails from students this year, which is really nice. It's even been something that I've talked about in IEP meetings and really stressing to the parents that the communication doesn't always have to come from you. It can come from the students. And definitely as the years gone on, I found that I receive far more communication from the kids, whether they have an IEP or not, which is really nice because, it's seamless. They can ask questions or, get clarification, or even if it's, hey, can I come in during homeroom and meet with you on this? It's there. For students who maybe have some fine motor issues, we found that it's been really beneficial for them this year. In fact, I can think of students who I've had in past years where I've been like, oh, this would have been perfect for them, but we didn't have it at the time. One thing that's really nice is, if their handwriting is difficult to read, they can type. And I know you had asked about keyboards, and we have some students this year who do use them, and they're faster with that. And the majority of our kids, though, use the screen. And for me, that wouldn't be my preferred way, but they're natives, so they're able to do that. Also, the added benefit of autocorrect if they've got spelling challenges when they're typing their notes. For kids who maybe can't draw really well, you know, they can take pictures of things like diagrams or experiments, and that really helps with the memory as well. If we have students that are missing, we can airdrop, the kids mentioned, or email them notes, and notes that were taken in class, not necessarily notes that, you know, we prepared ahead of time, but notes that were done in real time. And that can be gotten to them much more faster and efficiently, which is nice. Like I said at the beginning, you know, at this age, the kids don't want to look different from their peers. It's important to them that, you know, especially because if they have challenges with learning, they don't want to look different. Some of our students receive modified tests, and in the past, you know, you might have to slip Jimmy, you know, the modified test, and it might look a little bit different, and maybe people might notice, and they might feel awkward about that. In Schoology, what we can do as teachers is we can have different versions of tests, and we can assign certain students certain tests based on their individual needs, so everybody looks the same. Some of our students might have formal or informal behavior plans, and in the past, we might have tracked behavior, you know, through paper and pencil means or taking data in the classroom, and now we can do that electronically. I have a student this year who has a points sheet, where in the past we might have had that as paper and pencil. I can create a Google form, and every period he can track how he did. And then I have a permanent record of that as well, which is really great. If a student is absent, or maybe I have a group that isn't understanding a particular topic, I can go ahead and create, you know, a video or a presentation for them that's about, you know, what they were missing. So it really is tailored to their individual needs. And then also in doing that, they have a permanent resource that they can access from home at all times. For some students, I might have skill-specific applications. So maybe they struggle with reading fluency, and that's something that we can address through a particular app on an iPad. And then finally, many of my students take a class like Academic Strategies, and while this isn't a class where work is specifically assigned, I can still use a Schoology page, like my peers do, more as a storehouse of resources that can be accessed on demand. So if I have a kid who needs a multiplication chart or a list of editing reminders for language arts, that's something they can just access from anywhere, and they can do it independently without having to ask somebody for it. So those are some of the benefits that I've seen this year.
One way that we've used it in health, along with the UPAD and the note-taking in the Schoology, is during our mental emotional health unit, I try and stress to the kids that we all have really great positive qualities about us, and you know, middle schoolers and adolescents, they have a hard time coming up with that. So this is sort of my acrostic poem 2.0, rather than just saying come up with a word that starts with the letter M and how that describes you. So the kids write positive adjectives and then use pic collage, which I believe Michael referred to, and they make their names out of those adjectives that describe them. So the creation piece there is just really, really neat, and seeing the kids just collaborate, even just verbally with each other, of like, hey, how would you describe me? You know, not just coming up with these words, but they're able to have those conversations between each other. And then homeroom teachers are now catching on and actually displaying these. So all the kids by the end of the year have their names and their positive qualities somewhere in the school or in their classroom, which I think at that age is great to just, you know, look at the wall someday and it's like, oh yeah, look, I'm thoughtful. My friends told me I'm thoughtful. Good, you know, proves the day. So that's one way I use it in health. And then in my other world at school is in PE. So just recently the kids were charged with making their own fitness video. So I gave the kids, you know, you need to pick certain strength exercises, certain cardiovascular, add it in with your stretches, and then we call it leveling. So they level out their exercises. So different levels of fitness can complete it. So this is just little, it's like 40 seconds, just quick little things from my classes. Star jumps.
Begin.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Done. Now take that score and add a 0 to it. That's your heart rate.
And then finally stretching. So we talk about in PE every day these components of fitness as well in health, and they're able to put them together and sort of have that creation piece, and the buy-in on these videos with these kids was huge. I mean, they asked me, they're like, can we have another day to finish editing? Because we want to add music and we need to put text so everybody knows what they're doing. I mean, they took it, I had this idea and they brought it like to a whole new level. So that's how we use it in health and PE.
And something that I'm trying to do in Spanish more is, while we've seen so much of that creation aspect, but how in Spanish do we get there? Because we need to learn the vocabulary and learn the grammar first before we can really create with that new language. So one of the ways that I've done that is with iCard Sort, which is an app that we have. And the picture on the left is a deck of essentially flashcards in a way that I created. And there's a mixture of verbs, and I think there's some adjectives in there, forms of transportation, subject pronouns, and so these are all elements that we had been learning. And what's nice about this is I can create that deck and then beam it out to the kids so they all get it and they don't have to create their own. So we all now have the same words. And I had the kids, without telling them the categories that I had made, figure it out on their own. What words do you see? And then they can manipulate them just on their iPad screen by moving the cards around. And once they got them into their categories, we kind of checked it as a class, and then I had them form sentences. So now manipulate each category. You need to use a subject pronoun, a verb, form of transportation, and a place in each sentence, and how do you put that together? And what was really cool at the end, too, is the kids, a few chose to email it to me, because you can just easily export it, and ask, can you just look over these sentences real quick and check them? So again, it's that really easy feedback, too, with what we're doing. And then the next project I'm going to talk about is this community tour, which Adam briefly mentioned in his part of the talk. And this was the end of our last unit, again, putting everything together, so more of that creation and in a real life context. So what they had to do was choose 10 places in the Wilmette, Chicago area that were either important to them or something that they felt like people might want to know about, and then talk about it in Spanish. And so here is one student's example. And you can see how also, as they chose their places, just by looking at the map, I can kind of tell what they are, because they can put pins down and then change the pins to become symbols. So I can tell this is probably some sort of coffee shop or somewhere where I get food. If I click on it, I can see that it's Panera. What they had to do was choose 10 places, 5 of which they talked about. So I believe High Crest was one of his. And this is where then, based on the other places he chose in Wilmette, he had to describe where it was located, who goes there, what do they do there, what's the purpose of that place in the city. And again, just bringing their learning into a real life context. So that's something recent we've done. Adam? If you guys have any questions for us.
I have a question. In your Spanish lessons, how do you incorporate Google Translate?
We don't.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this: did they have access to that app in classroom, or no?
I mean, I believe that it is yes, because it's online. We don't use it, though. It's not very reliable, so I encourage them. If they need to look up a specific word or something, that's fine. But what we do in Spanish is really try to encourage them to use what we've learned and kind of talk around what they're trying to say, so that they're really pushing themselves to use what they've learned. But yeah, I mean, in theory, yes, they do have access to that and could potentially use it, but we really encourage them to go with the other stuff we've been covering.
And then one more general question: how do you, if a student tries to sneak switches from the class app that you're using and goes on to something else, how do you monitor that? That's a question that comes up with the parents a lot.
I think that's, just a function of being present in the classroom. I mean, we're constantly circulating around. I've caught my fair share of kids, looking for, pictures of animals or things like that, when they're supposed to be doing something else. And, on our particular team, we have a system in place for that. We have a system of bonuses and fines with our classroom economy, so they know that can be, a negative thing if they are caught. But we haven't had any major issues as far as that goes.
It's definitely changed sort of where I teach from the classroom too. I'm now not just stuck to my computer, and I tend to find myself more in the back of the room, where I can just sort of look over all of their shoulders. Granted, I'm 6 feet tall, so I have a vantage point that some don't, but I can look over, just kind of look over and view and position myself in a way. I think, like Maura said, just the presence there. And it happens. I mean, it happens in, Becky and I can see in the non-one-to-one classes because we see both sides of things. It actually happens almost just as much with putting the book on their lap or doing something else in the non-one-to-one classes as I see it with my one-to-one kids. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And we have something that's called finished activities. So when they're done, something that they can work on, and it's usually crossword puzzles or things that practice the vocabulary, and they do. Those other classes always try to sneak it out, and I actually find sometimes it's easier on the iPads because if I see them moving something all of a sudden, but they're supposed to be typing and taking notes, it's fairly obvious. I mean, so are the other pieces of paper too, but I don't find it to be much different.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Levine?
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question that when Ms. Whiston was speaking, it struck me when you were talking about pictures and that helps with memory. It made me think about different learning styles and the extent to which the iPad either helps you identify kids who have different learning styles or how you've been able to adjust your teaching style to the different learning styles and how much easier that is or isn't, through using the iPad.
Well, just as an example, I mean, just in the classes that I co-teach, I think we have a lot more flexibility with how kids can present, their end product. For example, I co-teach reading, and when we finished up a book, we gave them kind of a menu of options. Some were visual, some were auditory, some were kinesthetic. And we said, this is your goal. You decide how you want to get there. And we had kids who created a rap song. We had kids who made posters. We had kids who made dioramas. So really, it's not so much about us identifying their learning styles. It's more giving them the options to display things in a way that tailors to their best way of learning. So.
Other questions? Mr. Steen.
Thanks for the presentation. As we go forward with this, if it expands throughout the school, you all will probably wind up being technology ambassadors of sorts to your colleagues. Can you talk a little bit about the reactions that you've gotten from colleagues, both positive and negative, and how you would plan to try and presumably push this forward so that everybody's using it?
I teach in everybody else's classroom, so I rotate around I'm in 6 different places in the day. So what I've found is that when I'm doing things, even with my one-to-one kids, I'll try and get the iPad cart and just streamline it through the rest of my classes. And I've had a couple opportunities where teachers have said, like, they'll be at their desk and say, like, hey, what are they doing right now? And I'm like, oh, they're using Pic Collage to make their names and they're spinning it, or using iCards, sort of like I beamed them the cards and they're doing it here, and they're like, oh, you can do that. And so I think just they're hungry for the knowledge, and I think they know that there are people who are working to do that. And from my experience, everybody's very willing to try it and wants to ask the questions and can sort of bounce ideas off us as we just have been bouncing ideas off each other. So even in my role of just being everywhere, like I get questions asked of, hey, how do you do this? And even with the one-to-one teachers, like I go to them sometimes and say, I want to do this. Where do you think I go? And they even have ideas for that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to connect to that last idea. I was thinking when you said the connecting with the other teachers, I mean, world language sometimes can easily be in its own bubble away from other things because it is very different. But I have found myself, going to the other one-on-one teachers and asking them, wait, what's that app? What did you do with that? How do you think I'm thinking about this idea. What apps have you used that you think it would work with? So I've actually found myself kind of planning and talking to other teachers outside of my department even more than I did before. And then to answer your question about within the department, based on, we display a lot of our work, or we walk around a lot in the school, so they came in, a couple of them, when I was doing this project, and they're very curious, especially the other Spanish teachers. Really want to know what's going on in my room, so they'll pop in during 9th period, because they both have 9th period as their preps, to see what's going on and to see what ideas they can come up with or use on their own, start thinking about for next year.
Any quick thoughts on the difference between the form factors? I notice you've got the mini and the others have the traditional.
I just have the mini. I just have the mini because as PE department last year we got these. Yeah. We actually have our kids, and one of the things that we were going to talk about is we do video assessments with our kids. So the one-to-one kids do it, and then we try and get it for the rest of the kids. So most recently did it with basketball. So they filmed themselves performing. They didn't film themselves. They had classmates filmed themselves performing skills, and they had a checklist rubric where are they dribbling the ball correctly? Always, sometimes, never. And so they're able to then go back and watch themselves and say like, oh, I think, and they would come, they bring this sheet to me and I'd say, well, what are you going to do better now? Like, well, I never keep my eyes up when I dribble. And then I'm thinking, well, I need to do this with my basketball team now because they don't do it either. So we just have these because we give these to the kids in class. So we just finished our roller skating and I have like 15 minutes of footage of kids being interviewed on roller skates right now because they want to skate with it and they want to, hey, Miss Kicker, come film our football play or so we give it to the kids. So that's why we have the minis. And the direction just went for everybody else the full.
I will say at the beginning of, when we had initially gotten our iPads last year, we initially gotten the mini. And just in using it from my own personal experience, it was almost too small. I'm not the best typer on a regular size iPad. I was even worse on the mini. So I think that was just from a size standpoint, plus we felt if the kids were getting the full size, it would be better if we were all consistent. So.
I mean, yeah, the manipulation, like you're thinking about iCard sort too, it's already, and sometimes a little small, you can make things bigger, but on a mini it's even kind of more so that way, where it's harder to see things sometimes, and so the visual for me is just better on the regular.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments? All right, onward. Ms. Alcantara, yeah.
We're still in financial questions.
Yes.
We haven't gotten that. Okay.
All right, I have a just practical question, which is all of these projects and files and documents are web-based. They're in the cloud. People are collaborating with them. You've got a project, it's due tomorrow, you go home and your internet is down, or your Wi-Fi router isn't working. How often is this happening? And I guess the other question is, I see this more of an issue even when you get to 7th and 8th grade, where the kids are working on long-term projects, research papers, those kinds of things. As it is right now, I think they probably are mostly working within Google Docs anyway, but I think that I'm just wondering if these are entirely reliant on Wi-Fi, do we anticipate just practical everyday problems with kids getting work done at home, and can they store their projects somewhere so that they can work on it offline?
Yeah. Once they've downloaded a file into UPad, they don't actually need to be connected to the internet to do anything with it.
Got it.
So
that answers a huge part of my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's nice is if like maybe you have unreliable internet or something's going on at home at night, or I tell kids like if you're going to practice or something tonight, or you've got a long car ride, as long as you've downloaded it into UPad, you can work on it then wherever.
I find that interesting only because I have 2 students who are doing a lot of work that's all online and all in Google Docs. And if Wi-Fi is down, there's nothing they can do. Whereas it's interesting that if you're on the iPad, you've got this app that you can work offline. You're not completely handicapped.
If they were working on Google Drive, they would need to be online, but I would say, we don't necessarily use Google Drive more than we used to or anything like that. I would say the majority we're using is UPad for those assignments.
Okay. And I guess the other question is more directed just to general classroom. We've heard a lot about math and how to apply this technology to math. And it seems to me that there are a lot of opportunities, but there may be a longer ramp-up time to do them. One of the thoughts that occurs to me is the idea that at least at the beginning of a new unit, that maybe a flipped classroom kind of idea would be a good use of the iPad at certain points in time, and being able to work through the problem in the classroom, for example, as opposed to at home, and to get the lesson at home. I don't know if that would be one of the ways that it would be helpful.
Well, for example, like last week we were starting something with equations, so we had the kids go home and watch some videos on different types of equations, and what was nice about that from my standpoint was that then the kids who didn't understand it, I could then check in with while they were working on something else, while everybody else was working on something else. It gave me a better idea of who needed my help. So from that standpoint, yeah.
And do you see see ideas for that, particularly in math for the future?
Yeah, for sure. There's tons of resources out there. Like we direct our kids a lot to Khan Academy, which has a lot of pretty in-depth well thought out math videos for a lot of the topics that we do cover. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. On to the next portion of the presentation, I think.
Okay, now I'd like to thank our teachers for coming here tonight and talk a little bit about our parent focus groups. We randomly picked one boy and girl from each homeroom and invited their parents to participate in a focus group. We heard from 8 parents, and here are some of the common themes. It is harder to follow work at home. The pilot teachers have recently reached out to many parents to get them enrolled in the parent portal, and we continue to encourage parents to sit down with their children and iPads to discuss their work. Parents are reporting that children are more organized, independent, and accountable with their work. They are more resourceful. Parents recognize there's a positive impact on learning, creativity, and quite a few comments about writing. There are concerns about math. Many parents feel it needs to be done on paper. This continues to be an option for students and is being monitored by the math teachers. Children are engaged in learning, and all parents reported that they want their children to continue in a one-to-one program next year and feel like it would be a big step back if they were not in one. Student focus groups. We randomly picked 2 boys and 2 girls from each homeroom to form a focus group. We had 4 focus groups with a total of 16 students. Here are some of the main themes. They enjoy working on their iPads and using Schoology. They want smaller binders to get rid of the binders or just a few folders. They feel they're more organized. They value the easy ability to access information. They feel they are able to communicate with their teachers and classmates more than in the past. They feel like they have a voice, where they may have been shy, would not want to raise their hand in class, or would not want to approach their teacher. They feel comfortable doing this through email or participating in class discussion boards. Many students state they like to do math on worksheets. They all want to continue in the one-to-one learning program next year, although a few were pretty insistent on getting rid of the heavy binders. So, a long-term financial impact of the one-to-one iPad pilot program has been completed. Savings, as well as potential new costs, have been documented. In addition to looking at number of iPads broken, 2 so far, and cost of cases and apps, the amount of time required by staff to support the one-to-one program was documented through a time study. Our classroom teachers all reported that they spend far less time now than they did at the beginning of the year addressing technical questions, and they are now more comfortable addressing those questions. Teachers also said the students often get help from their classmates and that they have the resources at school to support students. On average, they're spending 5 to 10 minutes a day assisting students with technical questions. They also had a little difficulty doing this because they said it's just kind of in the flow of teaching. They just, what's going on, they help the kid, they move on, and they really had to think about how much time they were spending, and they kept a little pen and paper next to them to help with that. The before school and homeroom drop-in program, available to all pilot students, averages 2 to 3 students a week, usually looking for assistance with an app. The technology teacher is spending around 3 hours a week. A lot of that time is dedicated to planning and co-teaching, as well as some troubleshooting. Our district hardware technician is spending an average of 1 hour a week troubleshooting iPads. And I receive about 2 to 3 emails a week from the iPad support email address we've supplied for students and parents. And I attend a weekly 40-minute planning meeting where I often assist with training, planning, and troubleshooting. With the change in the type of equipment needed at the middle school and junior high, when students have their own iPad, areas for cost reallocation were identified and plans for a new replacement cycle were developed. Looking at this chart, which is also on page 15 of my report, you can see the current technology equipment budget is $627,000. Next, a minimum annual cost of $95,000 was identified as the current replacement plan for district equipment, including equipment for internet and telephone services, district audio and visual needs, and our wireless network equipment. A few areas were identified for a decrease or a minimum purchase next year to support the first year rollout. And you will notice how these items increase after next year, but are different from years past, as there are fewer laptops and desktops to maintain in 6th through 8th grade. These areas include $35,000 for teacher laptops. This amount increases to $146,000 after next year. $12,000 for K-5 iPad replacement, which then increases to $29,000. $3,000 for teacher iPad replacement, which then increases to $22,000. And $9,000 for desktop replacements, which then increases to $70,000. $161,000 is the amount to maintain the laptops for K-5 students. This refresh needs to occur every year in this plan. And in the last row is the funding available for an iPad program. This was calculated by subtracting each item from the current technology budget. We have $312,000 in 2014-15, and then $104,000 the next 2 years. In this chart, which is on page 16 of the report, the total direct cost for one iPad is calculated. This includes the cost of the case, which is $60, insurance, which is $79, the iPad, $479, and apps, which is $30. This adds up to the total direct cost for one iPad, which is $648. This number is then multiplied by the 6th and 7th grade enrollment projections for 2014-15, and then 6th grade enrollment projections for 15-16 and 16-17 to come up with the total direct cost for all iPads. This amount is $542,000 in 14-15, and then almost half that amount in the next 2 years, $273,000 and $256,000. In this chart, which is the second chart on page 16 of the report, related costs were also accounted for. These include an upgrade in technical support of $36,000, an increase in internet bandwidth at $10,000, and the projected amount of broken cases at $3,000 in year one, and then $4,000 after that. Financial assistance is also accounted for families that may need help. This is at $22,000 in year one, and then $10,000 after that. All of these related costs are added to come up with the total related costs, which are $71,000 in 14-15, and then $60,000 the next 2 years. This next chart, which is at the top of page 17 in the report, calculates the additional cost to the district for this program. Here, the total related costs are in the first row, and the total direct cost for all iPads is listed in the second row. These figures are then added to calculate the projected iPad program cost. This is $613,000 in 14-15, and then $343,000 and $326,000. Then the annual funding available for the iPad program in the next row was subtracted from the projected iPad program cost to come up with an additional cost to the district for the next 3 years. $301,000 was calculated for 2014-15, and then $239,000 and $220,000. The next chart, which is the second chart on page 17 of the report, provides the same information as the last page, but in a different format. Here we are looking at budget totals. After adding the current technology budget every year and the projected iPad program cost next year, and then in 15-16 and 16-17, the funding available for the iPad program is subtracted to calculate the amount needed to support the one-to-one program, shown here as the new technology budget in 2014-15. This amount is $928,000, and then $886,000 and $849,000 in 16-17. The additional cost to the district was then calculated by subtracting the current technology budget from this new technology budget. In this chart, the additional cost to the district is $301,000, $239,000, and then $220,000. District 39 needs to find resources to support the increases in the technology budget to fund a one-to-one learning initiative. Because devices are ultimately owned by students, fees should be considered. In the long term, this program will cost approximately $225,000 per year to cover the additional expenses. 5 different annual technology fees ranging from $75 to $175 were reviewed. This chart, found on page 18 of the report, examines how fees would assist the district technology budget in a one-to-one program rollout. The chart shows the total sum of fees raised in each given year to offset the program costs. This next chart, second chart on page 18, shows the net budget differential under each of the fee options. So for example, in option E next year, in 2014-15, the money collected from the $175 fee, which was on the previous chart, was subtracted from the $312,000 previously identified as the funding available for the iPad program to leave $156,000, which is listed on this page in the bottom row. You can see from this chart that the bottom row, option E, is the closest to budget neutral. One important point about student fees is that 8th grade students will be able to use a calculator app and not be required to purchase a $150 graphing calculator. Also, an expansion of the one-to-one learning program will reduce the cost of student binders with an online student management system. Finally, if a student technology fee was assessed, students graduating 8th grade who have paid their annual technology fees will be able to keep their 3-year-old iPad, which will have a projected $215 value at that time. The administration suggests the school board consider a cost-neutral plan with fee option E, which is an annual $175 fee. The board may also consider offering a $50 per year material fee rebate over the same time period. This chart, which is found on page 19 of the report, shows the financial impact to parents with an annual $175 fee, a $50 rebate in materials fees, and the elimination of the $150 8th grade calculator. In this chart, the out-of-pocket cost the first 2 years is $125. In the third year, there's a $25 reduction, and the total for the program over 3 years is $225. In addition, students will be able to own an iPad with an estimated value of $215 upon graduating 8th grade. Another way to look at this is parents can purchase a $640 iPad for $225. This option can be considered cost neutral for parents, as the estimated value of the iPad they will own is roughly equivalent to their cost of the device over 3 years. Next steps. We will be conducting end-of-the-year parent and student surveys, and will provide an update on this information. The administration is also asking the school board to approve the expansion of the one-to-one program at the March school board meeting. This will include all students in 6th and 7th grade receiving their own iPad next year. The following year, the iPads would continue up with those students, and we'd be purchasing iPads for 6th grade students. So in effect, in 2015-16, we'd have all 6th through 8th grade students in the one-to-one learning program, and the following year we'd be purchasing iPads for the incoming 6th grade students. The administration is also asking the school board to consider option E, a $175 annual technology fee, and to consider a $50 annual material fees rebate. And that concludes my presentation.